Welcome to Accelerated Health Bites. I'm Sara Banta, and if you like what you hear today, please hit the subscribe button and share with those who may need my help. I'm only one person, but with your help, we as a team can help so many people accelerate their bodies, minds, and spirits and reach their optimal state of health. Today, I want to talk about the different fats on your body and how they can affect your health. There are some good fats, some bad fats. We've been taught that all fat is bad, whether it's the fat on the body or the fat you eat. And according to the food pyramid, you're supposed to eat 6 to 11 servings of breads and cereals and have an extremely limited amount of fat that you eat. Those guidelines couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, they are what lead to metabolic disease. And personally, I was following that guideline and I was insulin resistant on my way to becoming diabetic. As many of you are learning, eating fat doesn't make you fat. Sugar, processed foods, grains, breads, and vegetable oils are actually the culprits that lead to the toxic bad fat on your body, while eating the healthy fats can actually improve your health and lead to weight loss. So let's take a look at the different types of fat stored on your body. The first one, subcutaneous fat. This is called white fat. This is what you think of when you think of fat. It's the most common type of fat, covers your entire body underneath your skin. And as you accumulate it more and more, it's like putting more and more layers of clothing on. You look puffier with each level. Well, that white fat has very little metabolic effect on the body, and the body sees it as a storage for extra energy. Its purpose is to provide energy and fuel when the body's able to tap into that fuel system called ketosis and not consistently depend on that dietary sugar or carbohydrates. Too much white fat leads to obesity, which is a leading risk factor for most metabolic disease. Next, brown fat. Have you ever heard of brown fat? Well, brown fat's also known as the healthy fat. It stores energy in a smaller space on the body than the white fat. It's packed with iron-rich mitochondria, which is how it gets its brown color. And the mitochondria holds ATP, which is true cellular energy. So the brown fat is metabolically active and healthy. And all people have some brown fat they're born with. So babies have a ton of it. But there's also an ability to turn white fat into brown fat as we get older. This recruitable type is found in the muscles and white fat throughout the whole body. When that brown fat burns, it creates heat without shivering. And this process is called thermogenesis and leads to calorie burn as it contains the mitochondria and helps increase metabolism and fat burning. One of its functions is to provide that heat to help maintain body temperature in cold conditions. It also breaks down blood sugar and fat molecules to create heat and help maintain body temperature. Exposing your body to cold temperatures may help convert white fat into brown fat cells. That's why people do cold plunges or take cold showers. This is what they're trying to do. Unlike white fat, that brown fat burns calories to generate heat. And exercise may also increase that brown fat as it helps produce a protein called irisin that helps transform that white fat into brown fat. Lastly, visceral fat. Now, your doctor may have been telling you about visceral fat as the dangerous fat. This is the fat we don't want. It's the fat around our organs. It is actually an active type of fat and it has an inflammatory response. It's the fat that surrounds our organs in our gut, and it's the fat that causes that stomach to protrude. Visceral fat's also designed to have an immune response, and most people, especially in the United States, have way too much visceral fat. It leads to leaky inflammatory cytokines that can cause leaky gut, autoimmune issues, food allergies, intolerance, and intestinal barrier dysfunction. So we need some of it to protect us from pathogens or if we go septic. And it's helpful for those acute situations, but we don't want it for chronic leakage, as this fat leads to leaky gut, as I've talked about on my website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com, and it leads to inflammatory disease. One problem with visceral fat is that it actually puts physical pressure on our abdominal organs. And as the organs get more pressure, our blood pressure goes up and it increases our risk for heart attack and stroke. It also impacts the hormone adiponectin, which is referred to as our fat hormone. It regulates our metabolism, and visceral fat inhibits it, leading to a slower metabolism. It's also been linked to mental health issues, obesity, autoimmune disease, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, neurological diseases, arthritis, and of course, type 2 diabetes. So, what causes visceral fat? Well, too much visceral fat is caused by high levels of insulin. We talk a lot about insulin resistance here at Accelerated Health Bites and at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Insulin becomes elevated by high levels of dietary sugar and carbs, frequent eating, omega-6 fatty acids, and stress, of course. 65% of the United States is pre-diabetic and insulin resistance. I actually believe that number is a lot higher. Insulin resistance is a protective mechanism to limit the amount of insulin and sugar going into the cells, and the body stores the excess sugar as visceral fat for protection, because we will die if that sugar is in our blood. So it's constantly being shuttled to our cells and our fat cells for protection. Inflammation increases, and that leads to all the diseases I mentioned above. What foods increase that visceral fat? Number one, the worst of the worst, hydrogenated soybean oil and all those hydrogenated oils and omega-6 processed oils. These oils lead not only increased visceral fat, it also impairs your glucose metabolism, so your ability to metabolize sugar and carbs, and it increases insulin resistance. Vegetable oils stay in the body for over a year, and the damage is so long lasting. So even that sugar, even though it's bad for you, it's in and out of your body in a year. These vegetable oils stay with you and do damage for over a year. You want them out of your diet. Number two, ultra processed foods. It's been shown that these foods not only increase visceral fat, but also increased overall fat accumulation. Additionally, these foods damage the signaling of hunger, satiety from all foods, including your healthy foods, which lead to overeating. So the signaling from your gut to your brain saying, I'm full, is completely wiped out. And these foods include almost all packaged foods. So you want to stick to whole foods in general. This can also lead to serious gut dysbiosis and a compromised microbiome. Number three, fructose. And you may be saying, well, fructose, isn't that in fruit? Isn't that healthier than glucose? No, it's not. Fructose has glucocorticoid receptors, which respond to cortisol, your stress hormone. When we become insulin resistant and our body doesn't respond as well to the incoming glucose and fructose, lipoprotein lipase doesn't respond as well, and the subcutaneous fat cells don't accept any more fat. As a result, the fat gets stored as visceral fat. Fructose is found in high fructose corn syrup and all processed foods. Now, the fructose from whole fruit can contribute to this issue, but it's not the main culprit. The same amount of glucose doesn't increase the visceral fat like fructose does. So actually, glucose is better for you than fructose. You need to focus on low sugar fruits and abstain from all the highly processed foods, high fructose corn syrup, fruit juices, and high sugar fruits. Number four, alcohol. I know this is bad news, and don't shoot the messenger. In a study, visceral fat was correlated with those who drank 14 or more servings of alcohol per week. This is because of the way the ethanol is processed. Beer was shown to be worse than alcohols like gin, tequila, and vodka. Beer has gluten and beer has carbs. I don't know if that's part of the issue, but the gin, the tequila, and the vodka are much cleaner types of alcohol. Beer is more damaging to the gut microbiome in addition to being really hard on the liver. So in addition to increasing visceral fat, the body has no storage capacity for alcohol. So as it goes and attacks that alcohol to burn really quickly, it stores any other types of calories that you ingest as fat. So how do you lose that visceral fat? Number one, intermittent fasting combined with low carb diet. Intermittent fasting means that you're squeezing your eating window into a shorter period of time and not eating for a longer period of time. Sometimes that looks like finishing your eating at 8 p.m. at night and then not eating your first meal until about 12 the next day. That gives your digestive system a break, and it also helps lowering your insulin. And if you stick to a low carb diet, it will help burn the visceral fat. But what has been shown is that intermittent fasting on its own without a low carb diet doesn't help with the visceral fat. So you really need to combine it with a low carb diet. Focusing on that low carb sugar diet will help reset insulin sensitivity and lead to less visceral fat storage. Number two, makes the intermittent fasting so much easier, and that's accelerated keto. Accelerated keto includes additional fat burning ingredients that defat the liver. So there are a lot of you out there that have fatty liver disease. It is lipotropic, meaning it breaks down saturated fats into unsaturated fats, and these unsaturated fats are easier for the body to utilize and easier for the body to convert into ketones. Imagine a wax candle that's solid, and when we light the candle, the solid wax turns into a liquid, which is then taken up by the wick, and it burns much more easily. Because of that property, it's able to defat the liver as well. It's well known that the liver is responsible for converting stored fat into ketones or energy, and it's the liver that produces the ketones from fat. The more a person's liver is defatted and unclogged, the easier it is for the liver to function in all areas, including producing ketones. And the liver is also where the thyroid hormones convert from T4 to T3. As the liver functions, it becomes better and the thyroid works better, increasing your metabolism even further. And this mechanism leads to diminished visceral fat, in addition to less white fat as well. It also contains HMB, which is directly related to preventing muscle loss while you're losing that fat. Number three, my accelerated Ascent diet cleanse. You can find this at Accelerated Health Products, and this is my most comprehensive cleanse. It includes the accelerated keto, the accelerated iodine, the accelerated silver, and the liver flush that I'll talk about in a minute. And these supplements all work synergistically to reset the body, decrease the visceral fat significantly. It's also been shown to lower insulin and blood sugar, increase energy, increase fat burning, curb the cravings for carbs and processed foods, and cleanse that liver. All of these factors synergistically lead to a much faster loss of visceral fat and subcutaneous fat, and it increases the conversion of white fat into that brown fat or healthy fat that we talked about earlier. I was just talking to a client, and he's reduced his insulin drug by half from just being on the accelerated Ascent diet cleanse. And that was within 4 weeks, by half. It was just amazing. And the results are blowing my mind. Number five, eliminate those processed foods. Those processed foods not only increase visceral fat and white fat, but they blunt that signaling to the brain that tells you to stop eating. You want to focus on whole foods, including that organic wild animal protein, vegetables, and healthy fats like olive oil and coconut oil. Also, limit the alcohol 2 to 3 times a week. There's no storage mechanism for the body for alcohol. So what that means is the body sees the alcohol as poison, stops everything else it's doing, burns it up as quickly as it can, and stores every other single calorie that you ingest as fat. This is the way it triggers that heightened fat storage and all of those calories get stored. Lastly, you need sleep. It's been proven that fat burning actually occurs when you sleep, and without sleep, your leptin and ghrelin hormones for hunger and fat storing are completely skewed, and that will lead to increased cravings for sugar and processed foods, which increase your visceral fat. You may notice that if you have a bad night's sleep, you actually are hungrier the next day, and that's because it's screwing with your hunger hormones. So there you go. Thanks for joining me today, and remember to hit the subscribe button and share with others to be a part of this changing world, one person at a time. You can find my products we discussed at acceleratedhealthproducts.com, and be sure to join me every week with my interviews on Accelerated Health Radio and TV, where my guests share their cutting edge modalities to optimize their health and accelerate their bodies, minds, and spirits. See you in the next episode of Accelerated Health Bites.